Hey everyone, Nubkeks here, and in today's video, it's not exactly a high-octane video, but this is a really important one. We're going to talk about how to sim your character in World of Warcraft, and what the heck simming is anyway. I'm sure you've heard a lot of top players talking about simming your character. It's an absolutely essential tool, so yeah, let's dive into it. So a sim, we're going to be using a website called RaidBots, okay? Website called RaidBots. And this is essentially going to help you find out all these sorts of different things. It's going to find the absolute best gear from the stuff that you have in your bag. So like which trinkets are best, which rings are best, what enchants to put on them. It's going to find that. It's going to help us find our best drops from Mythic Plus, from the raid, from PvP gear, for anything. Compare different talents, find your stat weights, all of that. Before we dive into these actual sims, you are going to need an add-on, or you should use an add-on. I think for some of these sims, you can use, not this one. Yeah, you can load from Armory if you want to. So you can load from the Armory if you want to, but that's going to, be slower, be less accurate. You have to log out with the right talents and stuff. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab the SimulationCraft add-on, right? SimulationCraft. Just install this, and as you see, it's just going to do all this is all that it does. It's going to just collect all of the data off of your character sheet, basically, right? So it's going to check your talents, it's going to check your professions, your spec, your race, your covenant and your soulbinds are going to be in there, your renown. It's also going to check the actual gear that you have on, and it will also gather up the gear that you have in your bags, right? This is something that you can't do off of the Armory. It's not going to know what gear you have in your bags. You can also use this with your Great Vault. I did a video before on the Great Vault, which talked about running a sim for your Great Vault stuff to help you pick the best item out of the weekly selections. You can actually open up this add-on while you're at the Great Vault and then paste this into the sim to find out what's going to be best. Let's do a top gear sim first. Okay, so this is going to be kind of useful. I'm going to paste this because this is now updated. Got this nice cosmetic Crypt Keeper's Vessel, a cosmetic item I haven't put in the bank or vendored. So that's in there to sim, I'm pretty sure. So we can do a whole bunch of different stuff. We could decide which legendaries we want to sim. I'm not going to do that right now. But for example, okay, I've got the Sin-Stained Pendant. There we go, which is Haste and Mastery. I also have this necklace, which is Haste and Versatility. We can compare the two of those. Sure, why the heck not? Let's also compare all of our trinkets. Let's also compare all of our rings. Let's see which ones we really want to do. Actually, you know what? I'm certain that I want to use this Ritualist Treasured Ring, so let's lock that in. We're always going to use that one, but we'll be open with the trinkets. That's totally cool. We can check out different, we can put Sinful Revelation on this. We could put Eternal Insight on our chest. You don't have to choose these. You can use this the defaults. We'd actually, you know what? Let's sim all of these. Let's see what the best enchants are going to be. I don't have any gem sockets, so we can ignore that. I could also sim a couple of potency conduits. We'll stick that in as well. Haunting Apparitions. Let's also check Mind Devourer. Why not? Yeah, then I'm going to go with this talent build. This is a pure single target talent build. You can obviously choose different talents if you want to and see what the different things are going to be. And then we're going to come down into our simulation options. And you got lots of options here. We're going to return to this section afterwards. But basically what we're going to do is this is going to simulate 5-minute fights with all these different potential gear setups. It's going to check them all against one boss in a patchwork style fight, which basically means you're not moving. It's just one enemy and you're just sitting there blasting them. We'll come back and talk about some of these other ones in a bit. Generally speaking, I'd say they're not insanely useful, but there are a couple in here that are definitely worth using and will actually correspond to some useful real life situations. So we'll come back to it. Don't need to worry about the rest. Find top gear. There we go. Again, this is like an actual subscription account, so this is going to go through pretty fast. You'll have to wait longer. Just using this as a public user, you just have to wait in a queue, and the sim won't happen as quickly, but you'll still get it done. We're going to run this through. Okay, single target, 5-minute fight. What's coming back is the best. Your currently equipped gear is the top gear. Well, that's what I kind of expected, but it's always good to check, right? And then you can see different combinations. So, for example, if I put on the Sinful Aspirant's necklace, I would lose 24 DPS. If I swapped up my rings, I would lose 39. And there's also different variations in here. Like if I swap to this different conduit, I'd lose 86 DPS, and so on. So you'll see different ideas. Yeah, you get the sort of gist of this. Let's do another sim. Okay, and it also showed me that I was doing, what was that, like 5,125 DPS is the absolute best single target DPS I could achieve with the gear I have right now if I was to just hit a target like a raid boss with all the different raid buffs and stuff, just like that, right? Another couple of really cool things you can do I want to look at right here, which one of my guildmates, Thovi, suggested. He's one of our mages, and I think these are some really interesting tips. If we go into the quick sim, this is going to give you really, really fast info in terms of how your spec's going to perform. So again, if we go and we run this quick sim really fast, this should give us exactly the info that we had before. It might be slightly different, but again, broadly speaking, that's doing that. But the interesting thing here, check this out. So this is tip number 1 from Thovold. In fact, this is actually the second tip that he gave. He said that when you do a quick sim and scroll all the way down, there's a sample log with a breakdown of all abilities in order and which buffs were active at the time. This can be a great way to clear up any confusion about your rotation, your opener, your trinket usage, etc., especially if you're unable to get anywhere near the numbers from your target dummy sim. We'll come back to the target dummy thing in a second, but yeah, if we go through this quick sim, again, you can see this is the gear, the talents, etc., that it is basing this off of. This is really cool, so it's actually going to show you the damage breakdown that you would expect in a patchwork raid boss fight. Now, obviously, it's going to be slightly different in reality, isn't it? Because none of the raid bosses are actually patchwork. You know, you have to move to do mechanics. There's stuff going on. You know, you don't have any raid boss where you literally just sit there for 5 minutes and do DPS and never move or do anything. But if you were, this is how it would break down. It shows you how much damage each of your different abilities is going to do, how many times you cast those abilities, what your uptime on your dots, what you would expect that to be. And then if you come down here, it also shows you, like Thovold said, it's going to show you those buffs. What is the uptime of your buffs? How many times did they go on? That sort of thing. So for example, the Celestial Guidance enchant I have on right now, because my weapon is terrible, will be up for 44% of the time. You can see your trinkets, the uptime for those, and so on. Kind of cool, right? And then here, this is where it's kind of interesting. Do read this warning, right? So, you know, Thovold obviously was quite into this. Again, do read this, though, with care. This is just something interesting to go alongside following your class guides in terms of how to play your spec. Go to those first, but then you can come and look at this for another sort of insight, which can be useful, but again, use with care. But you can see here, this is going to show me the rotation. So it's going to pre-pull with Vampiric Touch. On the pull, going to do Shadow Word Pain, straight into a Void Torrent, summon in a Shadow Fiend, cast Devouring Plague, Void Eruption, popping my potion, Power Infusion, doing a Void Bolt, Mind Games Void Bolt, etc. And you can actually go through this and you can see what's happening, and you can see where the trinkets, the buffs are coming on during this and so on. You can sort of track your buffs, like Thrill Seeker at 40 stacks gives me 20% haste for 10 seconds. So that's kind of cool. I can see with my actual character and the actual stats, when is that going to kick in? So it's going to kick in around here. So 1 minute and 18 seconds into the fight. A little bit unlucky in the sense that, well, we should have a Void Eruption here at 138. So yeah, unfortunately, Euphoria fell off right there. We didn't have it up for the next Void Eruption. That's not what's going to happen in a patchwork fight. But you sort of get the idea. It's kind of interesting to go through, see what your rotation is going to look like, where they're using the abilities in the sim. It's a cool reference. Again, like I said, it's not a strict guide by any means, shape, or form, but it can be really useful to see. And just, I think, you know, a lot of people can sort of struggle with their rotation. So getting another insight, even just another way to present it can be very, very helpful to you to figuring that out. Back here in the types of sims that we can do, again, this is the first tip from Thovold, which is we go into the fight style. There's actually one called Target Dummy. As Thovi said, the Target Dummy sim disables any consumables, it disables Bloodlust, disables raid buffs, and it also treats the target you're fighting as if it has 100% health, right? So like a Target Dummy, the Target Dummy is always going to be at max health. You're not going to go into execute, etc. The interesting thing here is, as he says, unlike the Patchwork sim, which is simulating as if you have raid buffs, this will give you a DPS number you can actually achieve in-game. Do a Target Dummy quick sim, then fight a Target Dummy yourself for 5 minutes or whatever you simmed, and see if your numbers are going to line up. And then if your numbers are way off, then you know that you've done something wrong, basically, right? Then you know that you've done something wrong. So if we do a Target Dummy sim, here we go. But yeah, like I said, this means I could run this sim, I could go into the game, and I could just smack this Raiders training dummy here, and actually get some fairly accurate results for myself, right? Because you don't want to be burning your combat potions, or you know, you bring in a friend to cast Bloodlust on you. It's just not something you're feasibly going to be able to do. So this can give you an overall good insight as to whether or not you're doing things correct. So if we come back to this, we can see without raid buffs, without the raid buffs, our damage is way lower. So this is what I would expect to do against a target dummy. You know, it's giving me about 5,100 before in an actual raid with raid buffs, with Bloodlust and so on. Be a bit depressed, obviously, if I went then and tried to hit my target dummy, and I was upset if I didn't hit 5,000 DPS. I'd be kind of going, what am I doing wrong? No. Without those buffs, 3,800 is more likely, and again, you would get those sort of insights. As you can see, the buffs, we don't have those raid buffs coming in, like Arcane Intellect. There's no Chaos Brand from Demon Hunters, increasing magic damage taken by the target. That's not on the target either. That sort of stuff. So it gives you something that's actually achievable. Again, you can see the sort of the rotation that it is suggesting, and so on. So yeah, I think that is a really nice tip, right? This is kind of a useful, convenient way for you to check your DPS, because, you know, obviously this isn't something that I personally use. Like, I wouldn't bother. I don't need to use this, but I think for a lot of players that, you know, they aren't raiding, they aren't logging their raids, and, you know, they don't have a team to talk about that with, this could actually be quite a useful way for you to get some sort of immediate feedback in terms of how you're doing. Especially, I think actually Thorvald even mentioned, especially so when you're playing, you know, a new spec. You can actually sim yourself on a new spec without needing to step into a raid and embarrass yourself or whatever. You can just, you know, run your target dummy sim, see if you can get, you know, nice and close to that DPS number against that target dummy, and then, you know, so long as you're following your class guide, that you're playing your spec well. Just briefly mentioning another couple of the sims that you could run here. Again, I would say that they get a little bit too specific. Dungeon Slice can be okay. It's attempting to sim a Mythic Plus dungeon, so this can be useful. I'm not sure if this is fully updated yet, though, for Shadowlands, so definitely use with caution. In fact, yeah, okay, there we go. It sort of bugged out the web page for a little bit. One thing that I will sometimes use is you could use something like Cleave Ad, right? Cleave Ad, a single ad is up for about 60% of the fight. So, for example, that could be kind of good on Huntsman Altimore, right? If we think about the second, or I'll show you another way you could do it actually instead. But Huntsman Altimore, he has an add-in with him all the time, right? He's got one of his dogs is always there. In fact, a better way to do it might be, say, it's actually, we'll just go with Patchwork still, and we'll go for 2 bosses. So there's 2 stack bosses at all times. Okay, cool. In fact, let me go back here. Let's go into top gear, and let's figure out what we want to do. So go into our talents. Okay, let's say there's 2 bosses up. Man, I really don't know which talent is best. Let's just stick them all on, shall we? All my DPS talents. Okay, 2 bosses for 5 minutes, like Huntsman Altimore. Which one is best? Now, obviously, if you watched my sort of mid-level guide for DPS the other day, you'll know a better way to do this, which is going into, you know, actual Warcraft logs and looking at the top builds for the fight. That's going to be more accurate, but again, this can give you a rough idea. And if you are sort of a theory crafter type player, if you like sort of thinking about what's going to be best in these different situations, you can figure it out. So here we go. It figures that against 2 bosses, this is likely to be what is best, Misery and Shadow Crash. And more interestingly, we can come in and we can see the difference here. So for example, I can use my brain here and I can say, okay, what is it changing? So Shadow Crash, right? That's competing with Auspicious Spirits, which is purely passive. So there's, you know, straight away, there is a risk there that you could misuse this, which is going to make it perform slightly worse. Is it worth using an active talent over a passive one for the sake of that much 8 DPS? Is that worth it? I don't think so. And then also, even more than that, even more importantly, I know for Huntsman Altimore specifically that Barghast does spend time being dragged away, so he's not stacked up with the boss. We do nuke down some ads, though. Barghast does summon in some shades, so perhaps it could be useful to kill those shades. but I could just, you know, play it safe and go for the other talent instead, right? So you want to use your sim. It is up to you to interpret it and use it properly. Like, you still have to do that, but again, it's a really good way to find out some info. The other really interesting thing, I want to end on this one. Actually, no, there's two interesting things. So let's go for this one first, then we'll go to the stat weights, because I have some stuff to say about that. But this is the Droptimizer, and this is a really, really fun tool. So I can figure out, for example, I can look at my different loot sources and figure out what's going to be good for me. So for example, Castle Nathria, Heroic. Well, you know, I've got a good chunk of gear from that. I've got a good chunk of gear from the Great Vault. What is there actually left for me to get? So let's run a Droptimizer. Let's find out. And this way I can know which bosses I really want to prioritize. Which bosses, I guess there's not too much you can actually physically do about it anymore. You know, in BFA you could save your bonus rolls for these bosses. You obviously can't do that now, but certainly you could prioritize killing them so that you could get their stuff in the Great Vault. You could look out for that, or just cross your fingers and really hope and pray that you get it when you actually kill the boss. So let's check it out. This is going to show me all of the gear for Castle Nathria on Heroic that can drop for me. How much DPS each different piece of gear will be worth, and so on. And again, I could run different talent builds through this to figure it out. So I could, you know, figure out what's going to give me good gear for my actual Mythic Plus build. You know, so can I get stuff to help me out in Mythic Plus from the raid? I could figure that out. Or in this case, I'm running my sort of single target build to figure that out. So here we go. This is the boss summary, and it's going to give you a priority. This is how important the bosses are. So for example, for me, Shriekwing has 0 upgrades. It's useless on Heroic for loot. Same thing with Sludge Fist. And then again, you can see the expected value, what you're likely to get if you do get a piece of gear from that boss. And then you can also see how much DPS you'd get from your best drop. So for me, from Sire to Nathrius, if I got that beautiful weapon token, right? If I got that weapon token, it would give me about 4.3% more DPS, right? Give me 4.3% more DPS with this build, with the gear that I have now. That is what that piece would give me, which is really nice. It would give me 223 DPS. Awesome. And again, I can see how much the trinkets are worth and so on. I can see that Hungering Destroyer also drops weapons. I got a measly 184 weapon here. Very depressing. Weapon. I just can't drop a head either. I've been sat on this head. Luckily, it came with Leech, which was kind of nice. But I think I got this maybe week 1, and I just can't drop a head to stop my life. Can't get ahead. It's terrible. No, but yeah. Anyway, you see, like going through this. Here's the head. There we go. That's what I'm hoping to drop. That actually showed up my Great Vault, and I didn't take it. So hopefully that will drop off of Minerva this week, and then I can be happy. But yeah, that gives you an idea. Again, you could run it for Mythic loot and figure it out. You could also go in. You could run the dungeons. You can run different dungeons. You could check them out at the weekly chest level. You could check them out at Mythic 15. That's 210 gear, the best farmable gear. You can compare it. You can look for just specific dungeons. You can look for honor gear for conquest. You can do all that sort of stuff. You could check the world bosses. What will the world bosses give me? All that stuff, you can check that out, and again, change the different sim types. And then finally, this is one that drives me nuts sometimes, but this you can use to check your actual stat weights. So this is why simming is so important. Something that drives me mad is, have you heard of the add-on? I think it's called Pawn, maybe? I know there's certainly an add-on that tells people how much of an upgrade some piece of gear is for them. And you hear people say this and they go like, oh, that piece of gear, it's a 12% upgrade for me. It's a 26% upgrade. And you're going, no, it's not. That's not actually true. Why is it not true? It's because depending on the gear that you have on, again, beware, there are some shortcomings here, but depending on the gear that you actually already have, the way that stats interact with each other is actually fairly complicated. And depending on what stats you're low on or what stats you're high on, stats could actually have different values. So when you're using one of those add-ons with just the default settings, it's taking the general stat weights for your spec as if, you know, you didn't have any particular ones. So interesting enough, if I look at me for single target, look at this. Although haste is considered the #1 stat for Shadow Priests, because I have so much haste already, haste, although it is still worth a lot, is actually not worth as much as mastery is for me in my current gear. So again, if I show you my character sheet in game, okay, I've already got 800 haste, I've got 25%, I've got 470 critical strike, but my mastery is low 240, my versatility is low 216. But yeah, again, I come in here, I can look at my actual stat weights, and there we go. There I see it. For me, mastery can be really, really good. Interesting. Here's one thing I could do then. Let's actually go back and let's check this. If I do top gear, because I can actually control this with my ring enchants. Is it worth switching my ring enchants? Let's do it. Let's stick them all in. Why the heck not? And let's see what it says. It should be pretty quick. So we could go and check that. And it's a very small thing. We'll actually see how much DPS it could potentially increase us by. Probably not too much, but if you want to really min-max, this is definitely something you could do. And this also illustrates as well why it is so important to sim your character to know what actually is an upgrade, because these general recommendations are not necessarily good. So there we go. If I actually sorry, I had it set to look at the different talents as well. But yeah, if I changed the enchants, it would be slightly worse just because of how it would shift those stat values. So you can see that it's you know, this stuff isn't always necessarily clear. I mean, if you did change one of these enchants, the damage difference would be tiny. It wouldn't be a huge deal, but still, right? Still, you get the idea. So do beware of these add-ons that are telling you how much of an upgraded piece of gear is. They're not accurate. The best way to know is go in and actually run a sim of your character. That's the main purpose of these sims. You can't trust these general add-ons. It might give you a rough general idea. I mean, obviously if it's 20 item levels higher, it's much better. I mean, as we saw when we ran the stat weights, like you know what, let's run like a patchwork with like 5 bosses for 5 minutes. So something like a relatively general fortified mythic plus, not really, but you know, just very curious here in terms of like some AoE values, what that might give us. We'll find out, but yeah, right. Hopefully this was helpful to you guys. Let me know if this video was helpful. I hope that it was, and give you a bit of insight. Again, just get used to the website, play around with it. Throw your character stuff in there and find stuff out. I think especially it can be very easy to actually have, you know, better gear in your bags. You could have better gear sat in your bags without realizing it. Run yourself through a top builds, top gear sim. Find out which actually is the best. You might actually eke out a little bit extra damage for free just from being accurate there. So in terms of AoE damage, you know, if there were 5 targets for 5 minutes straight, you know, it's a little bit off, but still you can see haste starts to pull ahead there, and so on. Intellect, of course, still king by a major amount. Primary stats are huge in Shadowlands. But yeah, this gives you a rough idea, I think. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.